Itadakimasu! Let's roll up some sushi, shall we? In Sushi Roll from Gamewright Games. Hi, I'm Andy at Board Game Barrister. This play-along tutorial is designed to guide you through your first game of Sushi Roll as you play it. So feel free to grab your game box and play along. Let's start by getting the box open and retrieving all our game pieces. You should have 30 sushi dice in various colors, 5 trays, 5 conveyor belts, a dice bag, and a bunch of tokens, menus, chopsticks, pudding, and points. At some points throughout this tutorial, I'll suggest that you pause the video while you get caught up. Let's take our first pause here while you unpack your box and make sure you have all the components pictured here. Alright, let's get set up for our game. First, each player should take a tray and place it face up in front of them. If you haven't already separated the tokens by type, do so now, then place each pile in the center of the table. Everyone should take 2 chopsticks and 3 menus from the supply and place them beside their tray. Next, grab as many conveyor belts as you have players, and make sure one of the ones you grab is the red bordered belt. Shuffle those conveyor belts face down and give one to each player at random. Any unused trays and conveyor belts can go back to the box. Last, place all the dice in the dice bag, and refer to this chart in your rulebook that will tell you how many dice each player starts with each round. Give your dice bag a shake, and then each player takes that many dice at random from the bag, placing them on their conveyor belt. For now, it doesn't matter which side of those dice is face up. Once you've done all this, we'll be ready for round 1. Pause here while you finish setting up your game as shown. We're ready for round 1! Sushi Roll is a game about assembling the most delicious dish of sushi. Each round, a new set of sushi will be rolled, and we'll begin moving around on the conveyor belts, where you'll have a chance to grab the best dice for your dish when it comes around to you. You'll need to look ahead at what's coming, and pay attention to which sushi you think will be snatched up before they arrive in front of you. But you can also change your fate with the use of reroll menus and dice trading chopsticks. Ready to eat? The first thing you'll do each round is to roll the dice on your conveyor belt. Everyone should do this now. You'll now have a variety of sushi showing on all the conveyor belts around the table. Each player now takes a turn, beginning with the first player, the player with the red bordered conveyor belt. Your turn consists of 2 steps. We'll talk about the first step, which is optional, when we get to your second turn. Let's move on to step 2 for now. Step 2 is the main part of your turn, and that is to claim 1 die from your conveyor belt to your tray. The dice on your tray are how you'll score points, so by claiming a die, you're adding it to your score for this round. How do the different sushi dice work? Let's refer to your tray. It will give you a quick reference not only of how the dice work, but also each distinct face that's available on each type of die. Starting at the top, we have nigiri. Each white nigiri die scores you a set amount based on its face. Egg nigiri is worth 1 point, salmon is worth 2 points, and squid is worth 3. Next is maki rolls. Each face of these red dice has between 1 and 3 maki rolls on it. Maki is pretty simple. At the end of the round, we'll all compare our collected maki, and the player with the most icons collected, not dice, scores 6 points. The player with the second most scores 3 points. On to the appetizers. The purple appetizer dice have 3 different faces. Dumplings are the most common. At the end of the round, a single dumpling scores you 2 points. If you collect a set of 2 dumplings, they're still worth 4 points total, but if you collect a set of 3, they bump up to being worth 8 points total. Any dumplings you collect beyond 3 will start over as a new set. Similarly, a single tempura is worth 1 point, and 2 tempuras are worth 5 points. If you get to 3, they're worth 10 points. And the rare sashimi is actually worth nothing if you collect only 1. However, collecting 2 will score you 6 points, and a third raises that total to 13 points. The green special die has various effects. If you take a special die showing menu or chopstick icons, you immediately get to take the matching type and number of tokens. Because you don't have to wait until the end of the round to collect these tokens, you could choose to use them later this round if you wish. Wasabi is also available on the special die. Here's how it works. Wasabi first. When you collect a wasabi die, place it on your tray. Alone, wasabi is worth nothing. Nigiri on top. Anytime you collect nigiri, if you have a lone wasabi die on your tray, you must place that nigiri on top of the wasabi, tripling the nigiri's value. The order does matter, so keep in mind that if you collect a high value nigiri first, you can't go back and add wasabi later. And lastly, pudding. The pink pudding dice work sort of like maki in that each die shows between 1 and 3 pudding icons, and we're competing to have more than the other players. The difference is that the pudding will only be counted up at the end of the third and final round. As soon as you select a pudding die on your turn, you should immediately take a matching number of pudding tokens and add them to your supply. At the end of the game, the player with the most total pudding tokens wins 6 points, and the player with the least total pudding will lose 6 points. Once you've claimed your die, your turn is complete, and it's on to the next player. We're ready to get started. Pause here while everyone takes their first turn by claiming their first die. Then unpause when we've come back around to our first player. Great, everyone should have taken their first turn, which means everyone should have exactly 1 sushi die on their tray. After each full turn rotation around the table, we're going to shake things up a bit. Everyone should now slide their conveyor belt to the player on their left. Take all the dice on the conveyor belt that is now in front of you, and roll them, just as you did last time. Okay, we're ready to start, but let's add that first optional step to your turn. Before you claim your die for the turn, you may use menu and chopstick tokens to manipulate the dice on the conveyor belts. When you use one of your menu tokens, return it to the supply, then pick up any number of dice from your conveyor belt and re-roll them on the table. Then place them back on your belt as rolled. This will allow you to come up with some extra options for which dice to take on your turn, or to hunt for that one specific face you really want. When you use chopsticks, return the token to the supply, then swap 1 die on your conveyor belt with 1 die on another player's belt, keeping both of those die faces as shown. Also worth noting, the chopsticks only work on the dice that are on conveyor belts, and can never affect the dice on you or any other player's tray of claimed dice. You can use as many token effects as you wish in step 1 of your turn, as long as you have the tokens available. And you should make sure you fully resolve 1 token before spending the next. So, menus and chopsticks is the optional step 1 of your turn. You're set to play through turn 2, as well as your entire first round. The player who now has the red bordered conveyor belt will be the new first player for turn 2. Keep taking turns, rotating the conveyor belts, re-rolling dice, and having a new first player start each new round. Pause here while you do so, and unpause as soon as all the conveyor belts are empty of dice. When all the conveyor belts are empty, we've reached the end of round 1, which means it's time to collect points for your first trays. Following the scoring reference on your tray, collect score tokens equal to the number of points you earned. When scoring for maki, if multiple players tied for the most maki icons, then those who tied all get the full points. So for instance, if players A and B both collected 5 maki, they would both get the full 6 points, and then player C, who collected 4 maki, would get 3 points for having the second most. And remember, pudding scores nothing now, but you should have taken pudding tokens for each pudding icon you collected this round. Let's pause again while you score up your first round sushi tray, and unpause when everyone has finished collecting their scoring tokens. Sushi Roll is played over 3 rounds total, so if round 1 didn't go as planned, you'll now get to start fresh and change up your strategy for round 2. To prep for round 2, place all of the dice back in the bag. All players randomly take the same number of dice as in round 1 and place them on their conveyor belt. You're ready to start the next round by rolling those dice. Here's a weird extra rule. If you're playing with exactly 3 players, everyone should slide their conveyor belts 1 spot to the left at the end of each round. This is to make it so that a different player will get to start as the first player each new round. Alright, you're ready to play through rounds 2 and 3. Just so it's not a surprise later, the one extra source of points we haven't talked about at all is leftover special tokens. At the end of the game, every set of 2 unused menu and chopstick tokens in any combination is worth 1 point. It's not much, but it just might make a difference. Okay, pause here while you play rounds 2 and 3, then unpause after round 3 and we'll do some end of game scoring. Scoring at the end of round 3 is the same as the other rounds, except we finally score up our pudding. Compare everyone's pudding tokens, then the player with the most scores 6 points, and the player with the least loses 6 points. Just like with Maki, if there's a tie, the tied players gain or lose the full amount of points. So if 2 players have 0 pudding at the end of the game, they both lose the full 6 points. Here we have one more little side rule, and that is that in a 2-player game, the player who has fewer pudding doesn't actually lose those 6 points. And lastly, you score 1 point for every set of menu and chopstick tokens you still have. Count up your total scoring tokens, and the player with the most is our Sushi Roll winner. If there happens to be a tie, the player with the most pudding tokens wins it in the end. Well, there we have it. Thank you for joining me for this play-along tutorial of Sushi Roll. You could find other tutorials just like it here, and we'll see you next time.